Hello, beautiful friends. I am Laurel Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep, all while deepening in your connection with your beautiful team of angels who love you so. And we're going to weave this together with a bedtime story that will help you drift off into a good expanse of sleep. If we're meeting for the first time, I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. And I do this through one-on-one angel sessions, soul mentoring, and a variety of classes designed to inspire your spirit. And you can learn more at my website, illuminatingsouls.com. But for now, the angels and I are here to help you come into a deep state of relaxation, to bring the light and the love of the angels to you, and to keep you company. So to tell you a little bit about this podcast, it is a mashup, a blend of sorts, of two of my favorite self-care tools, working with the angels and sleep podcasts. It's an unlikely pair, but I'm an unlikely girl. It is what I love, and so it is my joy to share both of these modalities with you. So the way the episode will work is we're going to be together for about an hour, which gives you plenty of time to drift off. You don't have to focus too hard on what I'm saying. Instead, think of this as a loving, soothing, rambling, friendly voice where your consciousness can focus as you release yourself from whatever happened during your waking hours. And I will endeavor to be good company. In the first part of the podcast, we will be exploring spiritual principles. I'll bring in the angels. The angels will love you up. And then in the second part of the podcast, I will read you a story. So sometimes I tell you stories from my own life or what's happening in pop culture. Or sometimes I read to you something from the public domain. And tonight I'm going to be reading to you a travelogue from 1859 by a man named Horace Greeley, who was making his way across the country from New York to San Francisco. And we're going to be picking up the story when he was in Yosemite. And he's about to visit the Giant Sequoias. So some really interesting material. Not so interesting and riveting that you will stay awake, but also interesting enough that it serves as a really good bedtime story. But right now I'm here to bring to you the love and the light of the angels. And as I record this episode, I have just completed an amazing 4-day training with Mike Dooley. And you might know Mike from his Tut Messages from the Universe. He is just an amazing inspirer, and he has a book and an accompanying program called Infinite Possibilities. And when I saw that he was offering this training, it is a certification program. I just got the happiest of yeses on my inner radar. Does that ever happen to you? Something comes across your path and you get this yes before you even know what you have just agreed to. And that's how this felt to me. And so as I create this recording for you, I am filled with so much light and joy and vibrancy. And even though this is a sleep podcast, I send you these waves of helping you remember that you are a beloved in this universe, that you are a divine being having a human experience, that you are a magical and mystical being of light. And I am so grateful that I am someone who gets to help you remember the beauty of your spirit. So I want to share this energy with you. It is so filled with promise and a reminder that we're not alone on our paths, that we have many kindreds who also seek to embody goodness and light. So I invite you to take a nice deep breath in and release. And I encourage you to snuggle on in and cozy on up in whatever way works best for you. As I've often shared with you, my version of that is crawling into bed. I go to bed early these days. I'm typically in bed by 8 or 8:30. And what's so funny is I prepare my bed for sleep about an hour before that. I look at the clock like 6:30 or 7. I'm like, oh, good. I can pull back the covers and plump up my pillows and prepare everything on my bedside table. And I'm going to go brush my teeth so that when 8 o'clock rolls around or 8:30, I can just slip right into bed, no preparations needed. And the preparations really take me all of 3 minutes. I don't have an intense nighttime routine, but it amuses me how delighted I am when the time of day comes around, that I get to pull back the covers and prepare it for my reunion. And listen, I love my waking life. I have a beautiful waking life. And I also adore bedtime. Oh, I love going to bed. I did not enjoy it as a child, but now as an adult, it is sanctuary. It is an oasis. It means that I have lived another day on planet Earth. And now I get to drift off into the cosmos, into the astral realm. I get to replenish and reset. I get to be comfortable and cozy. So I'm fortunate that I have a good relationship with sleep and bedtime. My wish is that for you, this podcast will help to make your bedtime a lovely ritual for you as well. And so I share with you what the angels share with me. You have done enough for this day, and you are worthy of a good night's sleep. And so I will share with you what the angels share with me, and that is, you have done enough for today, and you are worthy of a good night's rest. And I'm sorry if you're hearing some ambient noise. There is some kind of aircraft going on above my home. I had waited for it to pass, but it doesn't seem to be in a hurry, so I'm just going to keep going. And we'll just use this as some lovely ambient noise to add to the magic of our time together. So I'm going to call the angels in to join us. They are already here, but I love the opportunity to consciously bring them in. So first off, I just invite you to take a nice deep breath in as we call ourselves forward into the heart of God. And just release anything that came before this moment. And beautiful angels on high, I invite you to join us here. And I ask that you infuse this broadcast with angelic light and love and compassion and healing. I ask that you lift us up and help us remember who we are as divine beings in human form, as the breath of God incarnated as ourselves. And angels, I ask that you send each of our beloveds their own wave of light, their own wave of love, calibrated just for them. And dear ones, just take another nice deep breath in and imagine, if you will, that the angels are infusing the space you are in with a beautiful, soft pink light, which represents divine love in this meditation, in this visualization. And divine light inherently knows what is needed. It knows where to go and it knows what to do. And so just allow it to be present with you. Allow it to bathe you in love. Allow it to soak into the cells of your body and the thoughts in your mind and the emotions of your heart. And imagine, if you will, even as your body grows more heavy in relaxation, it also grows lighter and lighter as your energy ascends. And just breathe and know that the angels are bringing you so much healing light and so much love. The angels are bringing you waves of inspiration as you sleep. This inspiration will help you feel more resourceful, more on purpose. There are beautiful adventures here for you. And you are transforming. You are becoming even more of who you are. You have an exquisite heart and soul. There is a vibrancy, a vitality that is the truth of you. And the angels are so grateful for you saying yes to this journey. So just breathe. And the angels say thank you for the gift of you. Thank you for the love that you carry in your heart. Thank you for your willingness to attune to brighter tomorrows. Thank you for your faith. Thank you for your hope. Thank you for your prayers. And it is not expected that you embody these blessings at every moment. Life is a roller coaster, right? We have good days and not good days. We have days when we know that we are dancing with the light. There are days when it feels like we're commiserating with the shadow. And all of it is the continuum of life here on planet Earth. And you're doing so much better than you know truly you are. The angels are here in this moment to help uplift you. Oh, they're here to help clear your burdens and clear that which does not belong to you. To help up-level your consciousness so it is easier for you to see the bright light on the horizon, to say yes to the brightness of your spirit. You are extraordinary. You are a blessing here on earth. This is your time. This moment, this beautiful, precious moment is devoted to you. So you just breathe in and let the angels carry you. Let the angels carry what feels heavy to you, but to them is light as a feather. Allow your consciousness to be infused with brighter thoughts, and allow your consciousness to become aware of portals of love and joy and opportunity that are here for you. And the angels are here to amplify this for you. We are here to help you remember your beauty and your brightness and your goodness. So take another deep breath in. Oh, my friend, I am so deeply grateful for this opportunity to shine love upon you. What a gift it is to see you through the eyes of love. What a blessing it is to feel this love moving through the universe, to find you right here in this breath. In this moment, we celebrate the gift of you. So take another breath in and allow your body to relax. You have permission to drift off. You don't have to listen to every word. I promise not to say anything so important that you need to stay awake. So allow yourself to rest. And I promise to keep you company for a while longer. And while you rest, your angels will be with you. And I'm going to read to you a bedtime story. So tonight, I'm going to read to you from a really fascinating travelogue. It's called An Overland Journey from New York to San Francisco, taken in 1859 by Horace Greeley. Was published in 1860. And in our last episode, I read to you from the chapter when he was going from Sacramento to Stockton to Yosemite. And this was a time before you could travel that path by railroad. So he made the journey by horse. So he was in a stagecoach for part of it, riding horseback for others, made part of the journey on foot. And when we left him in the story, they had made a very, very long journey to a cabin on the floor of Yosemite where they could finally rest, and he was exhausted. And he shared some of his perceptions and And so this is where we meet up with him. We traversed the valley from end to end next day, but an accumulation of details on such a subject only served to confuse and blunt the observer's powers of perception and appreciation. Perhaps the visitor, who should be content with a long look into the abyss from the most convenient height, without braving the toil of a descent, would be wiser than all of us. And yet that first glance upward from the foot will long haunt me as more impressive than any look downward from the summit could be. I shall not multiply details nor waste paper in noting all the foolish names which foolish people have given to different peaks or turrets. Just think of 2 giant stone towers or pillars, which rise 1,000 feet above the towering cliffs which form their base, being styled the 2 sisters. Could anything be more maladroit and lackadaisical? The dome is a high, round, naked peak which rises between the Merced and its little tributary from the most inmost recesses of the Sierra Nevada already instanced, and which towers to an altitude of over 5,000 feet above the waters at its base. Picture to yourself a perpendicular wall of bare granite, nearly or quite 1 mile high. Yet there are some dozen or score of peaks in all, ranging from 3,000 to 5,000 feet above the valley, and a biscuit tossed from any of them would strike very near its base, and its fragments go bounding and falling till further. I certainly miss here the glaciers of Chamonix. I think that's how it's pronounced. Forgive me if I don't say it properly. But I know no single wonder of nature on earth which can claim superiority over the Yosemite. Just dream yourself for 1 hour in a chasm nearly 10 miles long, with egress save for birds and water. But at 3 points up the face of the precipices from 3,000 to 4,000 feet high, the chasm scarcely more than a mile wide at any point, and tapering to a mere gorge or canyon at either end, with walls of mainly naked and perpendicular white granite from 3,000 to 5,000 feet high, so that looking up to the sky from it is like looking out of an unfathomable profound, and you will have some conception of the Yosemite. And I just have to interject that I so appreciate his description. You know, this was a time of life when the only time to take in the magnificence of Yosemite was by traveling there, or reading of the description, or perhaps seeing a sketch an artist had made. You know, nowadays we're so used to seeing these majestic vistas, right? I think we've all watched a documentary of the ascent of Everest at some point, or seen flyover footage of the Grand Canyon. But these ways of viewing these majestic vistas, this was not available then. So people had to rely on someone like Horace Greeley to describe it to them, because it was the only way they were ever going to be able to visit. So we'll continue. We dined at 2:00 and then rode leisurely down the valley, gazing by daylight at the wonders we had previously passed in the night. The spectacle was immense, but I still think the moonlight view the more impressive. Our faithful beasts climbed the steep acclivity at a little more than the rate of a mile an hour, so that we had still an hour or two of sunshine before us as we stood at last on the summit. I took a last long look into and up the valley with the sun still light upon the greater portion of the opposite cliffs, and then turned my horse's head westward. We reached at 10:30 p.m. the ranch on the South Fork, kept by a solitary man who has no neighbor nearer than 16 miles, and there halted for the night. So then we go on to Chapter 19, California, the Big Trees. Steamboat Cornelia on the San Joaquin, August 15th, 1859. On reaching Clark's Ranch, we were so happy as to meet the Reverend O.C. Wheeler, Secretary of the State Agricultural Society, and his associates on the visiting committee of that society, now on a tour of official observation through various districts of the state. We had agreed at Sacramento to make the trip to the Yosemite together, but some mishap had detained them 14 miles back of Bear Valley during the night of Wednesday last. And when at length they reached Mariposa, my party had been some hours on our way, while not a horse nor mule could be hired that day to replace their jaded nags, whose immediate proceeding on so rough a trip was out of the question. So they halted perforce till the next morning and were only going up to the Yosemite when we were coming down as aforesaid. But they had just returned to Clark's from the Big Trees of Mariposa, having visited those of Cavaleras 2 or 3 days before. The general impressions seems to be that the Cavaleras trees are the larger and finer, but Mr. Wheeler, having just visited each, was very decided in his preference for those of the Mariposa, and I understood all his associates to concur in that verdict. They found the Cavaleras trees in far better condition in the charge of a keeper, and approached by a road over which a light carriage may readily be driven up to the very trees themselves. There are no light advantages, but they assured us that, on the other hand, the Mariposa's trees are considerably more numerous, some 600 against 250, and are really larger and finer specimens of their kind. Mr. Wheeler found by careful measurement of the diameter of one of these trees 100 feet above the ground to be 20 feet, while its first limb, which put off at that height, had a diameter of 6 feet. Just think of a twig 6 feet through at that elevation. He obtained these results by measuring the tree's shadow, which I need hardly remark was probably narrower than the tree itself. He had several tape-line measurements of Mariposa trees over 100 feet in circumference, but one of the Calaveras trees is claimed to be, I think, nearly 1/4 larger than this. And I need to interject that I don't know if I have been pronouncing this as Calaveras or Cavaleras, so if I have been messing up this name, I certainly hope you are asleep and have missed this, because I do not want to have to go back and record this part of the chapter, so bear with me as I keep this very sleepy and rambly. I do believe it is Calaveras, and I have been mispronouncing it, so if that annoys you, I am so sorry. Okay, we're going to keep going though. Okay, here we go. He had several tape-line measurements of Mariposa trees over 100 feet in circumference, but one of the Calaveras trees is claimed to be, I think, nearly 1/4 larger than this. No matter, those of either county are big enough. We went up to the Mariposa's trees early next morning. The trail crosses a meadow of most luxuriant wild grass, then strikes eastward up the hills and rises almost steadily, but in the main not steeply, for 5 miles. When it enters and ends in a slight depression or valley nearly on the top of this particular mountain, where the big trees have been quietly nestled for I dare not say how many thousand years. And they were of very substantial size when David danced before the ark, when Solomon laid the foundations of the temple, and when Theseus ruled in Athens, when Sesostris led his victorious Egyptians into the heart of Asia, I have no manner of doubt. The big trees, of course, do not stand alone. I apprehend that they could not stand at present in view of the very moderate depth at which they are anchored to the earth. Had they stood on an unsheltered mountain top or even an exposed hillside, they would doubtless have been prostrated, as I presume thousands like them were prostrated by the hurricanes of centuries before Christ's advent. But the locality of these, though probably 2,500 feet above the South Merced and some 4,500 above the sea, is sheltered and tranquil, though several of these trees have manifestly fallen within the present century. Unquestionably, they are past their prime, though to none more than to them is applicable the complimentary characterization of a green old age. Let me try to give as clear an idea of those forest mastodons as I can, though I know that will be but a poor one. In measuring trees, it is so easy to exaggerate by running your line around the roots rather than the real body, that I place little dependence on the reported and recorded measurements of parties under no obligations to preserve a judicial impartiality. But I believe a fair measurement of the largest trees standing in this grove would make them not less than 90 feet in circumference and over 30 in diameter at a height of 6 feet from their respective bases, and that several of them have an altitude of more than 300 feet. I believe the one that was last uprooted measures a little over 300. But these relics of a more bounteous and magnificent world seem destined to speedy extinction. I deem them generally enfeebled by age and the racking and wrenching of their roots by the blasts that sweep through their tops. These malign influences they might withstand for ages, however, were it not for the damage they have already sustained and are in danger of hereafter sustaining through the devastating agency of fire. For these glorious evergreen forests, though the ground beneath them is but thinly covered with inflammable matter, are yet subject to be overrun every second or third year by forest conflagrations. And I will just interject that even in our time, these trees are still standing, and they take great care of them during the time of forest fires. They will wrap them in fire-resistant material, and we take care of them as best we can. So we'll continue. For the earth, to a depth of several feet, even is dry as ash heap from July to October, and the hills are so steep that fire ascends them with wonderful facility. And thus the big trees are scarred and gouged and hollowed out at the root and upward, as the effects of successive fires, one of which, originating far southward, ran through this locality so late as last autumn. So I'll just sort of end his, as he's talking about the fires, that I really love that we have done our best to preserve them and care for them. it is a treasure that we all share, and having not seen the ones in Yosemite, but seen some of the other ones in California, I will add that they are breathtaking. It's like when I am around them, I just feel a transcendent quality, because it is a sign that God is here, right? That nature, that we are a part of something so much bigger. So if you ever get a chance to see the big redwoods, definitely it's worth the trip. So I'm going to keep going. The big trees are usually accounted redwood, but bear a strong resemblance to the cedar family, so that my intelligent guide plausibly insisted that they are identical in species with their probable contemporaries, the famous cedars of Lebanon. The larger cedars in their vicinity bear a decided resemblance to the smallest of them, and yet there are quite obvious differences between them. The cedar's limbs are by far the more numerous and come far down the trunk. They are also relatively smaller. The cedar's bark is the more deeply creased up and down the trunk, while the foliage of the big trees is nearer allied to that of certain pines than to cedars. The bark of the big trees is very thick, in some instances over 2 feet, and is of a dry, light quality resembling cork. The wood of the big trees is of a light red color, seeming devoid alike of sap and resin. Unless in the cedars of Lebanon, I suspect these mammoths of the vegetable world have no counterparts out of California. They are, of course, not all of extraordinary size, yet I cannot remember one that would girth so little as 20 feet, at a height of 2 yards from the earth's surface, which is the proper point for the horizontal measurement. And then he writes something really beautiful, which has actually happened. He says, "I am sure they will be more prized and treasured 1,000 years hence than now, should they by extreme care and caution be preserved so long, and that thousands will then visit them over smooth and spacious roads, for everyone who now toils over the rugged bridle path by which I reached them." And that's what has happened. So, yay. I'm so grateful for the visionaries who said we must preserve them and care for them. They are important parts of planet Earth. So, okay, we'll keep up with his travels. We left the big trees a little after 10 a.m., returned to Clark's and fed, and then struck for Mariposas, where we arrived a little before 6 p.m. I alone, so covered with boils caused immediately by horseback exercise, as to make riding in any way a torture. My friend, who had taken me up to Hussey's in his carriage, was promptly on hand on my return, though he had been 100 times assured that I could not possibly be back at the time appointed. We had a gathering and a talk on Mariposa in the evening, and then I rode over to Bear Valley, which we reached a little before midnight. Next evening we ran down so far as the Tuolumne on our return, and today came on to Stockton, where we took the steamboat for San Francisco, which we had hopes to reach a little after midnight. So you know what? Let's go ahead and skip to Chapter 30, which is California Physically Considered. And he's writing this from San Jose, August 27th, 1859. The state of California may be roughly characterized as 2 ranges of mountains, a large and small one, with a great valley between them. and a narrow irregular counterpart separating the smaller from the Pacific Ocean. If we add to these a small strip of arid but fertile coast and a broad sandy desert behind it, lying southwest of California proper and likely one day to be politically severed from it, we have a sufficiently accurate outline of the topography of the Golden State. Such a region stretching and rising from the Pacific Ocean up to perpetually snow-covered peaks 15,000 feet high can hardly be said to have a climate. Aside from the alpine crests of the Sierra and the sultry deserts below the Mojave and Santa Barbara, California embodies almost every gradation of climate, from the semi-Arctic to the semi-tropical. There are green, fertile valleys in the Sierra, which only begin to be well grassed when the herbage of the Great Valley is drying up, and from which the cattle are driven by snows as early as the 1st of October, long before grass begins to start afresh at the banks of the Sacramento. There are other valleys upon and near the seacoast wherein frost and snow are strangers rarely seen, and vanishing with the night that gave them being. Generally, however, we may say of the state that it has a mild, dry, breezy, healthy climate, better than that of Italy, and that the sultry, scorching blasts from African deserts have here no counterpart, save in the high mountains or in the extreme northeast. Snow never lies. The earth never freezes, and winter is but a milder, greener, longer spring, throughout which cattle pick up their own living far more easily and safely than in summer. And I have to say, as someone who moved to California in 1985, that is in part what drew me here. The gorgeous weather. And I love that. You know, I'm an hour away from Muir Woods. I can go to the ocean. I can go to the mountains. It's beautiful here. Okay, we'll continue. Let's see what he tells us next. The climate of the valleys may be said to be created as that of the mountains is modified by the influence of the Pacific Ocean. Sea breezes from the southwest in winter, from the northwest in summer, maintain an equilibrium of temperature amazing to New Englanders. And as an editorial note, to Chicagoans like me. Okay. San Francisco, situated on the Great Bay formed by the passage of the blended waters of the Sacramento and the San Joaquin, the former draining the western slope of the Sierra Nevada from the north, as the latter does from the south, is thus, as it were, in the throat of the bellows through which the damp gales from the Pacific are constantly rushing to cool the parched slopes or warm the snow-clad heights of the interior. I presume there was never a day without a breeze at San Francisco, generally a pretty stiff one. The sea breeze is always damp, often chilly, and rolls up clouds which hide the sun for a part, at least, of most days. Though ice seldom forms and snow never lies in her streets, San Francisco must be regarded as a cold place by most of her visitors and unacclimated summer denizens. I presume a hot day was never known there, and no night in which a pair of good woolen blankets were not esteemed a shelter and a comfort by all but extremely hot-blooded people. Thick flannels and warm woolen outer garments are worn throughout the year by all who have or can get them. In short, San Francisco is in a climate what London would be in her summer rains, transformed into stiff and almost constant breezes. The soil of California is almost uniformly good. The valleys and ravines rejoice in a generous depth of dark vegetable mold usually mingled with or resting on clay, while the less precipitous hillsides are covered by a light reddish clayey loam of good quality, asking only adequate moisture to render it amply productive. Bring a stream of water almost anywhere, save on the naked granite, and you incite a luxuriant vegetation. Yet the traveler who first looks down on the valleys and lower hillsides of California in midsummer is generally disappointed by all but universal deadness. Some hardy weeds, a little sour, coarse grass along the few still living water courses, some small far between gardens and orchards, rendered green and thrifty by irrigation, form striking exceptions to the general paralysis of all the less inspiring manifestations of vegetable life. High up in the mountains he has found green valleys whereon the snow doubtless lingered till late June, leaving the soil saturated like a wet sponge for a month later, and there are swampy meadows whereon the coarse grass grows thick to a height of several feet, while beds of delicate flowering plants sheltered by the tall forests maintain their vitality on the mountain slopes till late in August. But he passes out of the region of evergreens into that of oaks as he descends to a level of some 3,000 feet above the ocean, and valley greens luxuriant meadows and mountain glades of flowering plants still living salute him no longer. The oaks gradually become sparse and scattered. Their dark foliage contrasts strongly with the dun, dead herbage beneath, and between them as he descends to the plains, the oaks vanish or become like angels' visits, while a broad expanse of dried up pasture range vies with occasional strips of wheat or barley stubble in evincing the protracted fierceness of the summer drought. His vision sweeps over miles after miles of stubble and range, wherein no sign of vegetable life, not even a green weed, is presented. He sees 7/8 of the water courses absolutely, intensely dry, while the residue are reduced from rivers to scanty brooks, from brooks to tiny rivulets, and he murmurs to himself, "Is this the American Italy? It looks more like a Sahara or Gobi." Yet this, like most hasty judgments, is a very unsound one. These slopes, these vales, now so dead and cheerless, are but resting from their annual and ever successful efforts to contribute bountifully to the sustenance and comfort of man. Summer is their season of torpor, as winter is ours. Dead as these wheat fields now appear, the stubble is thick and staunch, and its indications are more than justified by the harvest they have this year yielded. And I just have to say that was one of the odd things moving from the Midwest to California. Our winter is when our rain happens, and the hillsides become these beautiful rolling green hills. And then when we start going into summer, they turn brown, and it is so startling to see the change of these beautiful green hills to this parched brown grassland, and it happens every year. So I understand what he is talking about. All right, we'll continue. He goes on to talk about the wheat harvest and things like that, which I'm not going to read because even though this is a sleep podcast, I don't want to be that boring. Sorry if you're a wheat farmer. I'm not trying to pass judgment on wheat farmers. I just I want to be a little bit interested in what I'm reading to you. So I'm going to go on to the part where he's talking about the fruit trees, because I love fruit. Perhaps you do too. So he goes on to say, fruit, however, is destined to be the ultimate glory of California. And it is. We grow the best fruit here. I love how bountiful our fruit selection is. Nowhere else on earth is it produced so readily or bountifully. And I don't believe that is still true. There are many wonderful, bountiful fruit-producing regions, but I will continue reading. Such pears, peaches, apricots, nectarines, etc., as load the trees of this valley and of nearly every valley in the state which has any chance to produce them, would stagger the faith of 9/10 of my readers. And again, this is a time when, you ate seasonally what was produced in your region. So I would imagine coming to California where there is an abundant variety and our growing season tends to be a bit longer must have really been an extraordinary experience. Okay, let me keep going here. Sorry, I got distracted by all of the fruit he lists. I got so happy. Such pears, peaches, apricots, and nectarines. I'm like, yes, I love all of those, etc., as load the trees of this valley and of nearly every valley in the state, which has had any chance to produce them, would stagger the faith of 9/10 of my readers. Peach trees only 6 years set, which have borne 4 large burdens of fruit while growing luxuriantly each year, are quite common. Apple trees but 3 years set, yet showing at least a bushel of large fair fruit, are abundant. I have seen peach trees 4 or 5 years from the States, which of all the fruit they can stagger under, yet have grown 3 feet of new wood over this load during the current season. Dwarf pears just stuck into the black loam and nowise fertilized or cultivated, but covered with fruit the year after they were set, and thenceforward bearing larger and larger yields, which with each succeeding summer are seen in almost every tolerably cared for fruit patch. I cannot discover an instance in which any fruit tree, having borne largely one year, consults its dignity or its ease by standing still or growing wood only the next year, as is common our way. I have seen green gages and other plum trees so thickly set with fruit that I am sure the plums would far outweigh the trees, leaves, and all, and not one borer, caterpillar, appleworm, or other nuisance of that large and undelightful family appears to be known in all of this region. And now he comes to one of my favorite fruits and one of the coolest things of living in the Bay Area fruit-wise. He comes to grapes, because I love grapes, so of grapes. It is hardly yet time to speak so sanguinely as many do, for years will be required to render certain their exemption from the diseases and the devastators known to other lands of the vine. But it is certain that some kinds of grapes have been grown around the old Jesuit missions for generations with little care and much success, while it does not appear that the more delicate varieties recently introduced are less thrifty or more subject to attack than their Spanish predecessors, and the vineyards are being multiplied and expanded in almost every farming neighbor. Single vines and patches of choice varieties are shooting up in almost every garden throughout the mining regions, and there can be little doubt that California is already better supplied with the grape than any other state of the Union, that she is destined soon to become largely and profitably engaged in the manufacture and exportation of wine is a current belief here. which I am at once unable and disinclined to controvert. And I just have to interject that where I live, I'm about 20 miles south of Napa, which is known for its wine. And one of the things that I have enjoyed about living in this region is this is a wonderful time of the season for grapes here. And when I go to Berkeley Bowl, which is a wonderful supermarket that has an extensive produce section, there are always so many different varieties of grapes, including wine grapes. And I love getting to taste different kinds of grapes. And just as an aside, if you like grapes that taste like grape juice, if you get a chance to try a Kyoho grape, which is not a California grape, I mean, they can be grown here, but it's a Japanese variety, which can be grown in California. But if you ever see Kyoho grapes, oh my gosh, try one. They are so delicious. And perhaps this is a good place to complete this part of the journey with Mr. Greeley. And I can share with you my personal soliloquy for grapes because I love them. And this is coming upon a great time of year for us here in California. So my favorite varieties are the aforementioned Kyoho grapes, which you may also see as peony grapes. And for those of you in the U.S., there is an online Asian market called Wee. It's with 3 E's, Weee. And I think their website is Say Wee. And they have Kyoho grapes. So if you want to try Kyoho grapes, check out Say Wee. And perhaps they will have some in your area that you can try. I also love the variety called Autumn Crisp, which are not quite available yet. They'll be available probably in about another month, and they are green grapes that taste like sugar. And as much as I like sweet grapes, I am not a fan of the cotton candy grapes. They just don't taste right to me. So those are my 2 favorites, the Kyoho and the Autumn Crisp. And I love that I live in an area that grows grapes. Up in Napa, up by Oxbow Market, there used to be a large culinary institute, and I forget the name of it, but they had planted vines, grapevines, in the parking lot. And they used to make parking lot wine, parking lot grape wine, I think. And when the Culinary Institute closed, the grapes kind of went unclaimed. And so I remember one year I went up there and picked some grapes, and they were delicious. They taste different than the grapes you would normally buy in the supermarket. But that was a fun adventure, claiming some of the parking lot grapes, because the Culinary Institute was no longer there and was no longer going to be using them. And to be honest, I haven't been up there in a long time. I wonder if the vineyards are still growing. I just drove past there the other day. So maybe as one of my assignments for the podcast, the next time I'm up that way, probably later this week, I will drive by and see if the vines are still there and if they're producing grapes. I'm really blessed about the region I live in. I always want to be 20 minutes away from a Trader Joe's and a Whole Foods. I feel like that's my deal breaker, because I don't know, those are important to me. It makes me sound very shallow, but those of you who love Trader Joe's, you will know. And so we don't have a Trader Joe's right around the block or anything like that, but there is a Trader Joe's and a Whole Foods that are next to each other up in Napa. And so sometimes that's where I do my Trader Joe's run. And I always love going to Napa because it's just beautiful there. And there's other Trader Joe's. And I'll tell you more about that, I suppose, if I ever do a Trader Joe's centric episode, which perhaps I will do because all of their pumpkin spice stuff is about to come out, and maybe we'll do an ode to Trader Joe's in one of the episodes. And that's how my mind works, right? We just went from the Giant Sequoias to talking about Trader Joe's. So rambles, beautiful musings and rambles and wanderings of consciousness to help you drift off. My hope is you're asleep, and if you're not, if you're still awake and you want more company, good news. I have like 83 other episodes in the archive. And maybe by the time you listen to this, there'll be many more than that. And you can queue one up, and I will be delighted to keep you company longer. So in the meanwhile, the angels and I wish you a good rest. I am profoundly grateful for you and for this opportunity to share the angels' love with you. So you be well. You take good care of yourself because you are precious and worthy of that and so much more. And we'll talk again soon. Thank you.